How many? How many are there? Right. I have in my presentation. I have mentioned it. How many are there?
Three.
Yes.
Three.
Shall I go back?
Yeah, 3 elements.
You see. No. Basically, that is right. I mean, when we report our perception experience, now see here, this is an example. When we report our perception experience with banana, we try to combine our visual sensation, that is means what we see, with feelings, our likes or dislikes, and with the images, past experience with other bananas. That means right. We but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this following line. Through his studies, Tishner concluded that structure of human mind was made up of more than 30,000 separate sensations, feelings, and images. Right. So, consciousness or experience can be broken into three basic elements. Three basic elements. That's what you mean, right? What are they? Physical sensations, feelings, and images, right? So the examples for them only are given here with the banana, right? When you get the idea about banana, right? The three basic elements that we encounter, what? Visual sensation, feeling, and images. So visual sensation means what we see as a banana. Then the feelings means with our likes and dislikes about banana, and images means our past experience with banana. Right. But these are the three basic three basic elements. But these elements are made up of more than 30,000 separate sensations. This is what Tishner has said. Right. Now let's move on to the next one. Okay. Now we are going to see how this school of thought has contributed to the education. Structuralism helped establish psychology as an independent and organized discipline by separating it from philosophy. I told you, right, these are the initial people, these are the people who initiated psychology as a science. So with the establishment of structuralism, right, they were able to establish psychology as an independent and organized discipline by separating it from philosophy. Earlier, psychology was a philosophical subject. These are the people who made it a science. It provided introspection as a method of studying behavior. Irrespective of its criticism, introspection is still used and considered as an important method of studying human behavior. Right. Now, I told you, right, although introspection was criticized by people who proposed various other thoughts later on, introspection is still used today, but in a more different and more advanced form as hypnotism. Right. Establishing first laboratory for psychology and employing the technique of systematic observation of the activities of mind helps establishing psychology as a subject of scientific study and experimentation. These are their contribution to establish science as a psychology as a science, and these are their contribution to education. So we come to the next, the second school of thought. It is functionalism. Right. So there were so many. Right now, we know it started with structuralism, and there were thousands of followers. After some time, those who were following found that structuralism was not 100% right. Right. So they started criticizing. So those who did the experiments and those who criticized this system, this school of thought, proposed a new idea, which is called functionalism. As opposed to structuralism, a new school of thought was proposed by William James A is missing there. William James, right? William James is known as the father of psychology in US. He is considered as the pioneer in functionalism. William James was strongly influenced by Darwinian theory and his own interest in medicine. One thing special about this person, William James, is he was a doctor. He was a medical doctor. So, and also he was highly influenced by uh, Darwinian theory. Darwinian theory means, Charles Darwin, the father of evolution, right? His ideas of human evolution also were incorporated in William James functionalism, right? So he was influenced by him. He adopted a biological approach to the study of mind and led the field away from structuralism. He declared that something was wrong in Wundt's and Titchener's approach. Then he said, he claimed that consciousness or experience cannot be broken into elements. What he said was, right. Now, what you need to understand is, although we can say right now structuralism was the basic thing. Then they started studying that. After that only they invented new things. It doesn't mean that structuralism is wrong or bad. As we know, right, when we learned about atom, right? Now we talk about Dalton. Dalton said atom was the smallest unit. Then came some other people who studied what the Dalton said and did experiments, and after that they found some other things. They found that there are small elements like electrons, protons, mesons, like that. Right? But for them to find it, what paved the way and what helped them greatly was the idea proposed by Dalton. Likewise, for these, although we call these people although we call these critics of structuralism and Wilhelm Wundt, they were really helped and they were kind of influenced by the first thought of school. They did experiments on this. Only because they were able to do that, they were able to find a new school of thought. Right. So when they were as they were doing some experiments on structuralism, they found that there is something wrong. There's something wrong in Wundt's and Titchener's approach. What was wrong? This is the idea they say. He claimed that consciousness or experience cannot be broken into elements and there is no way to separate ideas, thoughts, sensations, or perceptions. So this was their idea. Structuralism does not reveal anything of what the mind really does or how it goes about doing it. Another criticism they had was, right, you can't break the experience into different, or you can't separate them into different ideas, thoughts, sensations, or perceptions. Then they said, right, the structuralism did not reveal anything of what the mind really does and how it goes about doing it. They studied only the structure of mind, but they did not say anything about the function of the mind. That is what, so they were more practical about this. Then they said, so knowing the composition or structure of mind is not as important as understanding its activities or functions. So this is the idea they stress. They stress that knowing the structure is less important than finding out how the brain functions. So William James thought his doctrine William James, through his doctrine, introduced the theory of mental life and behavior. So the behavior and the mental function of the brain came into being with William James. He considered the mind to be a recent development in the evolutionary process. I told you that he was influenced by Charles Darwin. So the function of which was to aid man's adjustment to his environment. So he said that mind was a recent development of evolutionary process. So the function of which, its function was to help the man to adjust to his environment. According to James, consciousness or mental life is a continuing and flowing unity. He said consciousness, right? In English, we call here, right? Or mental life is a continuing and flowing unity. It's like a stream that carries the organism in its adaptation to the environment. Then he said, our minds are constantly forging association. The forging means making associations, revisiting, revising experiences, starting, stopping, jumping back and forth in time for adding to our functional abilities to adapt to our environment. So habits are, so he said, habits are nothing but the functions of the nervous system. Right. Now you may understand now, right? Now he is looking at a more practical aspect of mind, that is the function of the mind. How do we understand or how do we study the function of our mind? That is only by, we can do it only by observing people. I mean, it is through our behavior, it is through how a person behaves. Through the study of behavior only, we can identify what activities are taking place in that person's mind. So habits are what? So according to him, habits are functions of the nervous system. Right. Now we'll talk about the habits a little later. Right. So this is about functionalism. Right. Okay. Now I want you to speak. Right. What is functionalism? Hello. What is functionalism? Hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, functionalism. Now, we earlier talked about structuralism. Right. Now, functionalism came as a solution
Structuralism.
to the weaknesses in the, who proposed the school of thought called functionalism. Who is the main man? Yes. Who is the main man? Should I go back?
William James.
William James. Right. What was his background? What was he really?
He's a doctor.
He was a doctor. And what really affected his new findings?
That Darwin's theory.
Darwin's theory of human evolution. So what he said was, mind was a latest development of man's evolution. As a result of evolution, mind was the latest development. Right. So, right, he wanted to study the activities of, functions of the mind. Means how do we study or how do we observe the functions of mind? How? By studying the behavior of people. By studying the behavior of people. How can we study the behavior of people? What can we do for that? Yes. How can we study the behavior of people? What is the method? Now, earlier, the method used by structuralists was introspection. Now, what is the method used by these people? Yes?
Observation.
Yes. What's it? Observation. What is it? Tell me, please. What is the method? What is the main method?
Observation.
Observation. Observation. So they said earlier, right? Now, one of their main criticism was introspection was a weak method and it was not very scientific. The reasons they cited were, right, introspection could be biased, right, and also it could be unrealistic and it is not reliable, right? So that they wanted a better mechanism to observe, better method to study behavior. So so the method they proposed was observation, right? Is observation a scientific method? Is observation a scientific method? Just tell me. What do you feel? Hello. Is observation a scientific method? Please tell me. You tell me whether yes or no, whatever you feel. Hello.
No.
Hello. Hello.
No.
So one says no, right? It's all right. You have the liberty to answer like that, right? But now I think some of you and most of you have done researches, right? Have you done researches?
Yes,
Maybe
sir.
for you, maybe right when you are in the College of Education, you did the small research, right? Okay. Now in the research, what was the method you used to observe? I mean, collect data. What is the method that you used?
I
Yes.
use questionnaire.
You use questionnaires, right? Okay, right. What are the other methods?
Interview.
Questionnaires, interviews, very good, right? Case studies, likewise. So when you do researches, observation also is a very useful technique, right? So we can't say that observation is not scientific, it is highly scientific. Introspection might not be that, it is scientific, it is also scientific, but it's not that, I mean, we can say that it is not reliable. But observation, on the other hand, is very scientific and it is very methodical and very accurate. So you might tell me, right? You might argue, how can you say that observation is that reliable, right? The person who observes some other person might not report properly, right? And sometimes he or she, the observer might have some favorisms. Yeah, it could happen. So that we could, right? You can use some advanced techniques, right, in doing observations by employing several observers to observe one person. So the subjectivity of the reporting would be lessened. Now, say for example, there is a person, right? You want to study his behavior. You don't employ only one person. You employ about 5 to 6 people or even 10 people to observe that person. And then you ask everybody to independently report. Right? So what? Finally, you read all the reports and get the most common factors. So this way, we can avoid favorism and all the other negative effects that the observation could uh, produce. Right. So observation is the main method. What you need to learn is in the structuralism, the main method was introspection. So in the functionalism, the main method is observation. Is it clear to you all? Yes?
Sir,
Yes, sir.
sir, how can you do a observation to one person for a long time, sir? Is it successful?
What dear? What?
When we do a observation in one person for a long time,
Yeah.
can we do it for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, there are things called longitudinal and all that right now. Sometimes you have to observe especially in a case study and all that. What you do is you observe a person for a long time. Right? So now one thing you have to understand is why we do an observation. Why do we do an observation? Because we want to find something about that person. So according to our requirement of finding, right, the length of the observation depends. Now, if you are studying about a child with what we call learning difficulties, right? Then you will have to study him for quite a long time, right? But if you are talking about, if you are studying about a certain sudden behavioral change of a person, then the observation might not be that long. It could be limited to a certain period of time. Likewise, according to the requirement of the of our experiment, only we decide the length of our observation. But as you ask me, as you question, observing a person for a long time, right, might cause some problems. That's true. But when it comes to case studies and all that, these observations are important, right? So we are going to discuss the contribution of functionalism to education. What are they? It laid the emphasis on functionality of the content of the curriculum by advocating that only those things which children can practically use should be taught. So when preparing the curriculum and all that, functionability of the content were considered. So what influenced this to be done is the influence of the functionalism. Learner-centered approaches in the methods of teaching open the way to discover new methods and devices in the teaching learning process. So these people, these behaviorists, these functionalists and behavior, then we are going to discuss another group called behaviorists. So these people were instrumental in creating learner-centered approaches. Now we know earlier it was lecture method, jug and mug method, but now we are talking about child-centered or learner-centered education, where the child is given due respect and he is considered as a person, as a person with a lot of potential, and so the job of, earlier the job of the teacher was earlier teachers were supposed to be the people who knew everything, whereas the students did not were supposed to know nothing. That is why the concept called jug mug came. Jug means the jug is full of knowledge. Jug, the lecturer or the teacher. Mug, the students, right, who didn't know, who did not have, right, any knowledge. So the job of the jug is to fill the mugs. But now this approach was changed with the invention and with the new inventions and the contributions of psychology, especially educational psychology. So as a result, what happened, instead of teacher-centered methods, child-centered or learner-centered methods were introduced. And also this helps to widen the scope of psychology and education psychology by a variety of new methods for studying behavior, mainly based on scientific inquiry, systematic data collection, and objective interpretation. So the objective interpretation, I told you, without biases, you have to interpret the data or whatever you collected through observation, right? So in order to make sure that it is objective, right, in order to remove subjectivity, you employ as many observers as possible and you get the mean of their ideas, observations. Introduction of valuable technique like questionnaire, inventory, mental test, and so on in the field of measurement and evaluation was also a contribution from functionalism to the education. It opened the way for the study of psychology in terms of adjustment of the organism to the environment. It promoted motivation as a main instrument in education, as advocated by John Dewey, the relevance of education and motivation are. So another very important contribution of this functionalism is the introduction of motivation to education. So we come to the third school of thought, behaviorism. The person who promoted this idea is James B. Watson. he concluded that the idea of consciousness is absurd. According to him, the idea of consciousness is absurd. Consciousness cannot be proved by any scientific means. That is what he says. For consciousness cannot be seen, touched, or exhibited in a test tube. So, right. So what he said was, studying or talking about consciousness is really absurd, because consciousness could not be seen, touched, or exhibited in a test tube. Even if the consciousness exists, it cannot be studied scientifically because it is subjected to only private inspection. So he says, even if consciousness exists, right, it cannot be scientifically studied, right, because it is subjected to private inspection. In order to make psychology a science of behavior, we should only concentrate only on the observable and measurable behavior. So he believed, if we want to make psychology a science, then we have to rely only on observable and measurable behavior. Consequently, behaviorism as a method of studying focus its attention totally on overt or observable behavior. So the people who proposed this idea, right, so they believed, they highly emphasized the importance on observing overt behavior. That means observable behavior. For this, it reduces all man's activities, including his thinking, feeling, and volition, to the level of that behavior which could be observed and objectively recorded. Right. So here, right, now we come to a point, right. Now, although the earlier people were talking about constituents of mind and functions of mind and all these things, right, according to behaviorists, all those things could not be studied. So what could be actually studied are the observable behavior of people. So this is narrowing down of the areas vulnerable to observation. The theory of behaviorism proposed by Watson is based on the findings of Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov. We will talk about him, right, when we come to learning theories, right? He's the, right. So Ivan Pavlov is the propagator of the theory of classical conditioning, right? You might have heard about Meat and the Dog, the story, Bill and all that. We will come to that when we talk about it in another 2-3 lessons. In his experiment, Pavlov conditioned a dog to salivate at the sound of a bell by substituting that sound for sight and smell of meat, and concluded that all behavior is response to some stimulus in the environment. One of the basic ideas in the behaviorism is all our behaviors are responses to stimuli. Watson tried to apply his approach in the field of human behavior. Through his famous experiment with an 11-month-old baby, Watson tried to apply the above approach in the field of human behavior and concluded that behavior is merely the response to a response to some stimuli in the environment. There are two repeating verbs. You remove one. It should be merely the response. Here is merely the response to some stimuli in the environment. So actually, behavior is what? It is a response to a stimulus in the environment. How we behave and why we behave in a particular way can be successfully demonstrated and explained through habit formation and conditioning. Thus, conditioning through environmental influences and not hereditary endowment or innate differences are responsible for shaping behavior of a child. So he concluded, right, what? Conditioning through the environmental influences are responsible for shaping the behavior of a child. So not the hereditary factors that affect. Behaviorism thus tried to project human beings as little more than rather complex machines which respond in particular pattern to a particular type of stimuli. Stimuli means a plural of stimulus, right? The behavior of an individual is controlled by environmental forces and not by the hereditary endowment or innate differences. So behaviorists believed our behavior is governed not by our hereditary endowment or innate differences, but by the environmental forces. That means the stimuli that we get in the environment. So, okay, now let's talk about behaviorism. Who is the proponent? Hello.
Maybe
Hello.
what's
James B. Watson.
James B. Watson. So what was his criticism? Now you can see people who believed in one thought of school, right, criticize the school of thought they studied. Then new idea came. Then what happens? Some other people started studying the second thought of school, and they found mistakes with that, and they propose another idea. Right. This is how the psychology has developed as a science, proving and disproving. Right. You know. Right. It is the way of the science. Right. So so what did the behaviorist say? Now, functionally said, studying the constituents of mind was useless. So they said you have to study the behavior. Then what did this be? I mean they said you have to study the function of the mind. So they became functionalist. Then what do the behaviorists say? They said observing the function or the consciousness is useless because you have to observe only the observable behavior of people. Right. So, right. Now, according to these people behave, all these behaviors of people are responses to the environmental stimuli. They are not generated by their hereditary or innate factors. Right. So now let's see, right, what its contribution to education. Behaviorism helped replace introspective measures with scientific and objective measures. So introspective methods were replaced with scientific and objective measures, measurable methods. Right. Highlighted the effect of environment to the success of education and emphasized the need for providing the best possible environment for children to learn. Now, earlier people thought, right, people learned because of their innate ability, the hereditary factors. Right? But these people said it's not the thing. What is more important is the environmental factors. So, but later on we know both hereditary and environment are important. That we'll come to that conclusion later. But now these people are saying environmental factors are important for the successful growth of education of a child. Yes, that is true. That is why now we try to create a very rich environment for our children from the kindergarten, right, up until they are doing their up until they are completing their formal education. We give them a very rich, and we try to create a very rich environment so that it would support the progress of their learning. Techniques of shaping behavior and behavior modifications ushered in a new era into this field. New concepts like stimulus response learning, habits and conditioning were introduced. Highlighted the role of motivation and definitions of aims and purpose of learning and shaping the behavior. They advocated the reinforcement and rewards to promote learning, gave rise to innovations in the field of learning and instruction, right? So, with the behaviorism's contribution, right, when a number of new methods and new approaches to education came into being. One is creating a very rich and one is creating a very rich environment for our children to learn. Another is using scientific methods for observation. And also, right, they established the idea called SR bond. SR bond means stimulus response bond. Stimulus response bond, right? And also, right now, in classical conditioning, we talk about reinforcement. So that also, reinforcement in education also came into being with this. Right now, okay, I want you to discuss with me if you have any doubts up to in all these three areas we have discussed. Now we have discussed three schools of thoughts. So this really tells us how psychology evolved as a science. So we started with structuralism, then came to functionalism, then the behaviorism. So behaviorism is a school of thought which has had a very great impact on present day education. So its impact we have discussed. Right. Are these things clear to you? Hello? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Any issues? Any doubts? Okay. You can first read this presentation. I will share it now. I am screen sharing it, but I think it has been sent to you because I sent it to Arshad. So has he sent it to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Received.
Okay, you can read it several times and try to understand these differences. If you are learning these things for the first time, sometimes this might be little like Greek to you, right? But just read a little, right, and be familiar with these things. After that, we can lead the successful discussion, right? Then we come to another theory called Gestalt theory. So it's Gestalt means in German, right? It's a German word, right? Right. In Germany, a new theory, Gestalt theory, emerged as a reaction to structuralism and functionalism. Here you can see another thought evolved. What is it? Gestalt theory. The people contributed to this are Max Wertheimer, Kurt Kofka, Wolfgang Kohler, and Kurt Lewin. They were the pioneers of Gestalt theory. Gestalt is a German word meaning configuration or an organized whole in contrast to a collection of parts. Gestalt means an organized whole or complete set. Gestalt psychology is opposed to the atomistic and molecular approach of behavior. Right now, here, earlier, right now, people who proposed structuralism and functionalism, they wanted to study, analyze constituents of mind and also the components of consciousness. That means you break them into small parts and study. But Gestalt theory is against it. They say no, you can't study behavior like that. You can't separate a sensation, behavior or sensation or whatever into small parts and get a complete idea, so that you have to study the whole thing. Now, so now, say for example, an individual perceives the thing as a whole and not as a mere collection of its constituents or elements. The meaning of sensation and perception is always related to the total situation. Now, this is true, right? Now suppose right now you see a certain incident. Okay. Now, suppose a small scene from a teledrama or something. When you watch the whole thing only, you get a better idea. But now suppose now instead of showing you the video clip, you are shown different photos of the situation, and you are given different sounds and the other things. But when you look at those separate parts, you don't get the total picture. You don't get the total idea. You will get the total idea only if you see the whole scenery. So this is the idea proposed by Gestalt. So this has contributed to our education. We'll see how. 1 minute. Right. This is the reason, right, why now the children are given learning experience as units. Right. Now there is a theme, right? Now if you take different lessons, the lessons are arranged theme-wise. Under one main theme, there are certain components. So there is an interrelation between these two, these lessons in under one unit. So they are divided under under one theme. They are kind of not really divided. They are they've been lined up under one theme. So they are interconnected. So there is a cohesion between these separate lessons, so that it will give a totality for the students to learn it, right? So this is the influence of while the lessons are so designed as a result of Gestaltism. Right. Now, right, we have discussed 4, and we are coming to one of the most important persons, right? This school of thought is called psychoanalysis by Sigmund Freud. Analysis by Sigmund Freud, right? Who is Sigmund Freud? You also might have heard of this fellow, right? His name is, right, he is a Viennese physician. That means what? He's from Vienna, right? Vienna is from Poland, I think, right? Right. So we'll see what he now he is a revolutionary person, because his ideas, right, have really his ideas have revolutionized the field of psychology, especially the modern psychology. We'll see how. Freud, while explaining the structure of human mind or psyche, divided it into 2 different parts. What he did was, he divided his human mind into 2 different parts. First, by arranging it into 3 layers as conscious, subconscious, and unconscious, and postulating 3 other components: id, ego, and superego. Right. Now, all the other people up to now discuss only about the consciousness, right? But he is the first person to say, right, our mind, right, has 2 other parts. What are they? Now, all the other people were talking about, then they were studying consciousness. But he said, in addition to consciousness, there are 2 important layers known as subconsciousness and unconsciousness. So he explained this theory very nicely. He said, he, he compared, sorry, he, he compared our mind to a pond or a river or an ocean. Then he said, the surface layer of water, right? You get, it is only about something like 1/10 of the mind, right? Is our consciousness. That means things that we are aware of, feelings and the things that we are aware of, right? Then he says, under this, below this, there is another layer called subconscious. Then he said, below that, there is another layer called unconscious. Now, conscious mind is all about what we see, what we feel, and right, our conscious ideas and our conscious needs. Then they are the things which are readily available for us to understand things and realize things and all that. But what is subconscious and what is unconscious? So subconscious, right? We'll see this. If we compare the human mind to an ocean, river, or a pond, the upper layer of water or surface layer of water is our conscious mind. And it makes up about 1/10 of our mind, and it contains all the thoughts and images we are aware at any moment of our mental life are said to lie within this upper layer of our mind. Just beneath the conscious layer lies the subconscious mind. This middle portion of our mind stores all type of information just beneath the surface of awareness, dormant or untapped, which can be brought to the level of consciousness at a moment's notice whenever required. Thus, in the middle layer of the human mind lies all the experiences and training we have gained or learned through various types of training and experiences. So now we'll say subconscious mind contain all the knowledge and the experiences that we have learned throughout our life, but they are not aware, they are not available on our consciousness, but they are there. Although it is not used at the moment, they can be recalled at a short notice, but they are not active they are not basically active, but it can be, it is readily lying there, it is available, it can be called, right? It can be recalled at a short notice and made use of. Then the third layer is unconscious mind. Below the subconscious mind lies the unconscious, the most important part of our mind. It is related to the vast part of our mental life which is hidden and inaccessible to the conscious. Now, in addition to our conscious mind and subconscious, we have discussed, conscious mind contains all our present sensation and thoughts. Subconscious contains all our experience and knowledge that we have gathered throughout our life. Although it is not available right now, it can be called on very easily and made use of. Right. That is in the second
that
layer.
means,
Yes. Yes.
සර් අපි අර කියන්නේ උඩ හිත යට හිත කියලා ඒ වගේ අයිඩියා එකක්ද සර් එකෙන් මීන් වෙන්නේ?
හිත යටි හිත එහෙම වෙන්න පුළුවන් නේද? එහෙම වෙන්න පුළුවන්. right? දැන් අපි මේක දැන්
සර්ෆේස් කියලා අර එක්ස්ප්ලේන් කරේ ඒක උඩ හිත එහෙම වෙන්න බැයිද සර්?
මේක තමයි. දැන් සර්ෆේස් කියලා කියන්නේ දැන් ඇත්තට මේ කොන්ෂස්නස් කියලා කියන්නේ දැන් අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අර අපි භාවිතා කරන දැනුමනේ. දැන්ට අපේ ඔළුවේ දැන් අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මොනවා හරි යමක් කරන වෙලාවක අපි යූස් කරන නොලෙජ් එක තමයි අපේ සෙන්ස් අපේ සිහියනේ. සිහියට අඩංගු වෙන ඒවා තමයි අපි subconscious conscious කියලා කියන්නේ. සිහිය. එතකොට දැන් අපි කෝස් කරලා තියෙනවා, අපි ගොඩක් එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් අපිට ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා, අපිට ගොඩක් නොලෙජ් එක තිබ්බට ඒ හැම නොලෙජ් එකම අපේ ඔළුවේ නැහැනේ. හැබැයි චුට්ටක් මතක් කරපුවාම ඕනනම් ඒවා ආපහු ගන්න පුළුවන් නේ. අන්න ඒ වගේ දැනට ඔළුවේ නැහැ, දැනට භාවිතේ නැති වුණාට ඕන වෙලාවක බොහොම ඉක්මනට කෝල් කරන්න පුළුවන්, ඉක්මනට ගන්න පුළුවන් නොලෙජ් එක තමයි සබ්කොන්ෂස් නොලෙජ් කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒක තමයි තියෙන්නේ අපි ඉගෙන ගත්ත දේවල්, අපේ එක්ස්පීරියන්සස්, හොඳ දේවල්, නරක දේවල්, අපිට වෙච්ච දේවල් මේ ඔක්කොම ඒකේ තියෙනවා. හැබැයි හැම වෙලේම අපිට වෙච්ච නරක හෝ අපි ඉගෙන ගත්ත දේවල් අපිට මතක් වෙන්නේ නැහනේ. අපි අර පාවිච්චි කරන දේවල් ටික තමයි අපිට මතක් වෙන්නේ. ඒ තමයි කොන්ෂස් මයින්ඩ් කියලා කියන්නේ. කොන්ෂස් නොලෙජ්. හැබැයි සබ්කොන්ෂස් කියලා කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? අපි ඉගෙනගෙන දැන්ට ඩෝමන්ට්, දැන්ට නිද්‍රාශීලීව තියෙනවා. අපි දැන්ට භාවිතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් ඒවා අපිට ඕන වෙලාවක ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ නොලෙජ් එක තමයි දැන් ඔයා කියන විදිහ උඩු හිත යට හිත තමයි. මේක දැන් ඒතකොට උඩු හිත යටි හිත දැන් ඊළඟට තුන්වෙනි එකක් තියෙනවානේ. Now there is a third layer. හරි? third layer තමයි unconscious කියලා කියන්නේ. දැන් මේ layer එක කියලා කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? මේක තමයි කියන්නේ මේකේ තියෙන ගොඩාක් වෙලාවට කියන්නේ අපේ මේ ගොඩක් අපේ තියෙනවානේ අර ආශාවන් තියෙනවානේ. right? අපි කියනවා right මේම කොහොමද මම කියන්නේ? දැවකර ඊළඟ කන්සෙප්ට් එක කතා කරද්දී ඔයිට ගොඩක් හොඳට කතා වෙනවා right මම මෙහෙම කියන්නම්කො right now we have discussed conscious mind, unconscious mind. දැන් පුතත් තේරුණාද ප්‍රශ්න කව කවුද සුදීෂානේ දැහුවේ? ඔව්. උඩු හිත යටි හිත. ඔව්. උඩු හිත කියලා කියන්නේ ඇත්තට මොකද උඩු හිත කියලා අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කියන්නේ අපි භාවිත කරන හිත නේද? කියන්නේ අපිට සෙන්ස් වෙන ඒවානේ, දැනෙන දේවල්නේ. නේද? එහෙම නේද?
ඔව්.
ඔව්. යටිහිත කියලා කියන්නේ දැනට භාවිතා නොවන නමුත් සමහර වෙලාවට එන දේවල්. දැන් ඔය හීනවලදී එහෙම අපිට පේන්නේ ඒක කියනවා නේද? යටිහිතින් නේද හීන පේනවා කියලා කියන්නේ. එහෙම නේද?
අපේ ලොං මෙමරිස් තියෙනවා කියලා කියනවා නේද යටි හිතේ එහෙම.
අන්න රයිට්. ඒක තමයි. ඔව්. එතකොට ඒවනේ එන්නේ එළියට. දැන් ඔය එළියට එන විදිහ ගැන ලස්සනට කියවෙනවා මෙයාගේ ඊළඟ කන්සෙප්ට් එකේ. මම ඒකට එන්නම්. හරි? අපි ඊට පස්සේ ඩිස්කස් කරමු මේක. එතකොට ඔයාලට තේරෙයි මේක. හරි? හරි? එතකොට මෙන්න බලන්න රයිට්. දැන් අපි අන්කොන්ෂස් කතා කරන්නේ. මේක තමයි ඇත්තටම ඉඩ් කියලා කියන්නේ. දැන් මෙයා ලේයර්ස් තුනකට දැම්මනේ ඉස්සෙල්ලා කොන්ෂස්, සබ්කොන්ෂස්, අන්කොන්ෂස් කියලා. මේ අන්කොන්ෂස් ගැන තමයි මේ කතා කරන්නේ. ඒකත් කතා කරලා ඊළඟ කන්සෙප්ට් තුන කතා කරමු. එතකොට ඔයාලට මේක තේරෙයි. ඊට පස්සේ අපි මේක ඩිස්කස් කරමු. right බලන්න ඊළඟට. right unconscious mind. Below the subconscious mind lies the unconscious, the most important part of our. Now we thought conscious mind is the most important thing. Yeah, it's important, but the unconscious mind also is very important. That's why it is said the most important part of our mind. We'll see why. It is related to vast part of our mental life which is hidden and inaccessible to the conscious. So subconscious contain most of our, I mean, it is about, now say, I told you 10% consciousness, then subconscious maybe about 20%, right? The rest, about 60% of our mind, right? Or 70% of our mind is what? Unconscious. But it is hidden and inaccessible to the conscious. It is hidden. What it contains are these things. It contains all the repressed wishes, desires, feelings, drives, and motives, many of which relates to sex and aggression. Now, Sigmund Freud is criticized, right, for weaving, right, for stating that all our human activities are, right, motivated by our sexual desire, our sexual desire. Right? So many have criticized him for his overemphasis of sex. But now he says, right, all our repressed desires. Right now, we know our we have desires. We have our secret desires. We have our wishes. Right. There are certain drives. All these are sex-related drives, sex and aggression-related drives. These are hidden. But all these repressed ideas and forbidden desires are not destined to permanently lie in the unconscious. Now, this is the problem. Now, they are there, right? But they don't permanently lie in the unconscious. Why? We'll see. They usually strive and agitate to come to the subconscious or the conscious layer of mind. From time to time, these desires and images try to come out. Right. Sometimes in disguised forms, in dreams and reveries. Now, these suppressed, repressed desires, right, come out, emerge, right? Sometimes they emerge as dreams, right? This hidden treasure of mental life belonging to the unconscious is thus responsible for most of our behavior. Now, what he says is our behavior is not decided by our conscious thoughts, but by this hidden treasure of mental life belonging to the unconscious. Now, Freud says what we do and how we behave is always determined by the forces residing in the unconscious and not by the choices of conscious mind. The causes and forms of abnormal behavior and mental illness are also decided by what is hidden in the unconscious. Right. Now, do you understand? Now, according to Sigmund Freud, our behaviors, what we do and how we behave is not determined by our conscious mind, but by the forces lying in our unconscious. So what are the forces lying in our unconscious? Our secret desired motives, drives and all that which are suppressed and hidden. So sometimes people behave differently. Now we talk about people with some psychological issues and all that. Why these psychological issues occur? Because these repressed ideas try to come out. They come in various forms. Sometimes they result in psychological disorders, aggressive behaviors, and also, right, carefree sexual demonstrations, right? So all these things are, right, result of our subconscious and its dark motives trying to come out. So now, if a person is suffering from a mental disorder, right, in order to find a solution to that, the psychologist has to find out what are his hidden desires and what are the problematic areas which have caused this kind of behavior. So it is the task of the psychotherapist. It is the task of the psychotherapist is to search for the relevant in the unconscious and bringing it up into the consciousness in order to find yes, somebody, Himesha, yes, Himesha, are you trying to say something, Himesha? Hello, Himesha. Okay. Now we come to the next. Now the same thing he divides, describing three other forms, right? Called id, ego, and superego. Freud further invented three more concepts to explain the structure of mind. ඉස්සලා කියප එකම මෙයා තව විදියකට විස්තර කරනවා මෙන්න මේ මොකද id ego and super ego. id කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? The id represent the animal in man and is seated in the unconscious. අර unconscious එකේ තියෙන්නේ මොනවද? id. It is the source of mental energy and all instinctive energy of the individual. It is present at birth and has the qualities of a spoiled child. දැන් මේ කියන්නේ මේ id කියන්නේ මොකක්ද හරියට අර spoiled child කෙනෙක් වගේ. මේක අපි ඉපදෙනකොටම එනවලු. Right? It must spoiled child මොකද වෙන්නේ? It must get what it wants when it wants. In this way id උත් එහෙමයි. id කියන්නේත් මොකක්ද අර නරක ළමයෙක් වගේ. අර අපි කියනවා මේ id
Wild behavior means,
Yeah.
we can take it as a wild behavior.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it is very wild and uncontrolled. Very only thing it wants is a pleasure seeking, right? It proceeds on the pleasure seeking principle, right? And it does not it knows no rules, cares no one, right? And only wants to quench the desires. Basically, this is sexual desires, right? So
Uncontrolled mind.
yeah, it is uncontrollable behavior, yes, but it is there, right? It is present in us, but it is not coming out due to some other reasons. We'll see why, right? In this way it is quite selfish and unethical. It knows no reality and follows no rules and considered only the satisfaction of its own needs and drives. It operates according to the pleasure principle, the pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain, and in practice it does so by attempting to discharge the energy of the psyche quite irresponsibly. But for the welfare of individual and society, the blind, now we call this it blind because it cares nothing and it only wants to seek pleasure, but it is not allowed to discharge the useful energy in such thoughtless and irresponsible manner and is controlled by ego and superego. It is why there are two other elements which control our behavior. They are known as ego and superego, right? So it is the all our wild desires or the animal in us, right? Then we will see what ego and superego does. Superego is the moral, right? Like the discipline master in the school, right? It is superego. It always think it seeks perfectionism, and it always focuses on moral behavior, moral and ethical behavior. So these uncontrolled, right, and uncultured desires and drives of the id are not allowed to be unleashed. They are not allowed to be leashed. They are not allowed to be unleashed by superego because it controls. It always say no, you can't do it, don't do it, like it is not ethical, it is not proper. Likewise, superego plays the role of controlling. We'll see how it happens. The superego is the direct antithesis to the id and represent the ethical and the moral aspect of the psyche. It develops usually in the child at the age of 5. Superego start developing at the age of 5 and referred to as conscience or judgment from within. Like it also lies in the unconscious but is not governed by man's instinctive tendencies or primitive drives. It is idealistic in nature and perfection is its goal. Rather than pleasure seeking or destruction, it strictly controls the id. So superego, it always controls the id, so it cannot unleash its wild desires as it wishes, right? Then let's see what role ego plays. The ego develops out of the id and acts as an intermediary between three sets of forces: the instinctive irrational demand of the id, realities of the external world and the ethical and moral demands of the superego. So now it has all wild desires, it wants to unleash them. Superego controls all these things. But ego, what ego does is it balances these two things. It allows certain behaviors of it to come out and seek pleasure, but within given socially accepted range. So now say for example, right now, suppose, right, any person who has attained puberty, right, has a desire to engage in sexual acts, but our superego doesn't allow us to do it with, right, each and everybody we see or we like. So ego, what the ego does is, right, it allows us to find a partner, marry him or her, and perform that act in a socially accepted manner, right, so that the society would not be harmed and the other members of the society would not be harmed. Right? Likewise, right, certain desires are allowed to be unleashed, but within certain morally accepted, morally and socially accepted norms. This job is performed by ego. It is extended to all three layers of mind for exercising its balancing role to control the it in terms of reality and to appease the superego. Right. Now, did you understand this concept? Hello. Id, ego, and superego. Hello.
So in here,
Yeah.
ego control the wild behavior, and the command is given by the superego to the id.
No. What happens is now it is full of wild behaviors. These wild behaviors are always trying to come out. Okay. So what the superego does is it controls. It doesn't allow them to come out. But
Then here ego says,
ego allows all some of those desires to come out within a very accepted way, in a very acceptable manner. You understand what I mean? I mean,
yes,
now
So that
again,
means that ego is the one who balance both id and
yeah.
super
It is
ego.
right. It is in the note. It is the one which balances. It
Okay.
allows. It permits certain only a very limited behavior to come out and perform. Right. So actually, we may have so many wild desires, right? But we don't put them into practice. We do it in a very calculated manner. That calculated manner is that calculation is done by ego. It tells us, do it this way, it is all right, but don't do it so that it would lead a problem likewise. It would lead to problems likewise. Now, in a controlled way, we are allowed to release our wild desires by ego. Clear? දැන් මෙහෙම කියන්නේ දැන් ඊඩ් එකේ තමයි අපේ ඔක්කොම තියෙන නරක කියන්න බෑ. අපි තුමේ sexual desires ගැන මේ කතා කරන්නේ. මේ ඔක්කොම wild emotions මේ ඔක්කොම තියෙන ඊඩ් එකේ. හරි? ඊඩ් එකේ හැටියට මොකද වෙන්නේ? අර animal behavior කියන්නේ මොකද? animals අට ඕනෙම සතෙක් එක්කලා ලිංගිකව එකතු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැනේ. ඒ වගේ දැන් මිනිස්සුන්ටත් හැදිලා තියෙන්නේ එහෙම තමයි. හැබැයි මිනිස්සු එහෙම කරන්නේ නැත්තේ ඇයි? මිනිස්සු එහෙම කරන්නේ නැත්තේ මේ සුපර් ඊගෝ එක කියන එක අපේ ඩෙවලොප් වෙනවා. ඒක අපේ කල්චර් එකත් එක්කලා එන්නේ. හරි? ඒක ඩෙවලොප් වෙච්ච හින්දා මොකද අවුරුදු 5 දී හැදෙනවා කියන්නේ ඒකනේ. නැත්තම් අර ඉඩ් එක කෙලින්ම ඉපදෙනකොට මෙන එක. ඇනිමල් බිහේවියර්. මොකද අපි බයොලොජිකලි එහෙමනේ වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. බයොලොජිකල් සයන්ටිෆිකලි ගත්තාම බයොලොජිකල් නීඩ් එකක් තමයි සෙක්ස් කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒක තමයි ඒක ඩ්‍රයිව් එකක් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ ඒකයි. හරි? නමුත් අපි ඒ සෙක්ස් පර්ෆෝම් කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ හැම වෙලේම හැම කෙනාම එක්කලා. ඇයි ඒ මොකද අර අපිට අර දන්න කාලේ ඉඳන් අපි අපේ මේ හැඟීම් යටපත් කරගන්න ඒවා පාලනය කරගන්න අපිට ඉගැන්විලා තියෙනවා. මෙන්න මේ කතන්දරේ එන්නේ සුපර් ඊගෝ එක ඩෙවලොප් වෙනවත් එක. එතකොට සුපර් ඊගෝ එක මොකද කරන්නේ? අපි මොනවා හරි දෙයක් අර අපේ uncontrolled behavior එකක් එළියට එන්න හදනකොට සුපර් ඊගෝ එක මොකද කරන්නේ? එයා නතර කරනවා. නෑ ඔක කරන්න එපා. ඔක කරන්න කොහොඳ නෑ. එහෙම කියලා. හැබැයි ඊගෝ එක මොකද කරන්නේ? ඔක්කොම කන්ට්‍රෝල් කරගෙන ඉන්න එකත් හරි නැති හින්දා එයා දෙනවා හරි වා මේක කරන්න මෙන්න මෙහෙම මෙන්න මේ විදිහට. එතකොට මේවාට ප්‍රශ්නයක් එන්නේ නැහැ. එතකොට මේවාට සමාජයෙන් ගැටලුවක් එන්නේ අන්න ඒ වගේ අර ඊගෝ එක මොකද කරන්නේ? කන්ට්‍රෝල් කරලා මේකේ බැලන්ස් කරලා ඉවරලා ඊට මේ ඉමෝෂන්ස් එයාට අපිට එන්ජොයි කරන්න ඉඩ දෙනවා. Do you understand now? Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Is this the first time you learned about this psychoanalysis by Sigmund Freud?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So is it clear to you now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right.
Yes, sir. Some extent.
Okay, so you read it, right? Then after that you will get a better idea, right? And if you are interested, if you are if you have more interest in this, I will share some more notes I have, right? More detailed information about psychoanalysis. I have a kind of about 20-30 pages which you can read and enjoy, which is very nice, right? I have a lot of notes I will share with you, right? So this is by now we have discussed 5 major schools of thought. 5 major schools of thought we have discussed. So you have got some idea, I hope, right? So with this presentation is over, right? And I am coming to another presentation, right? Which is right. We are going to conclude this initial part of education psychology. Here we are going to discuss functions and uses of education psychology for us as teachers and the scope of educational psychology. So with that, our first session is over, but I'm going to, this presentation is will recap all the things from the beginning, in the sense from the definition up until the functions and the uses. Right. With that, we will wind up this 3 days lesson. So from next week onwards, we'll move on to the next lesson, that is child development. Right. Give me 1 or 2 minutes until I come to the presentation. Okay. Introduction to psychology and educational psychology. Right. Okay. Functions of psychology. Okay. Right. What are the functions of psychology? Can you see it? Hello?
Yes,
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what are the functions of psychology, right? Can you read it? Please read out. What is the first line? To afford
A thorough knowledge of the nature of the child.
So one of the basic functions of psychology is to make us enable to gain a thorough knowledge of the nature of the child we are or the students we are teaching. Right. So understanding the child is very important for us to teach. Unless we know whom we are teaching, right, it is pointless. Okay, what is meant by understanding the child? What do you need to understand about the child? What are the things we need to understand? Yes, yes, my dears. Yes.
About their likes and dislikes.
If there are likes and dislikes, yes. So that
About
you
their
can,
physical mental development.
yes, and you have to, yeah, right. Actually, they are what maturity they have. I mean, their intellectual levels, yes, right, and also their physical comforts and discomforts, right, and their social background, yes, their family backgrounds, right, and their abilities and disabilities, right, and their language fluency and difficulties. Likewise, there are so many things that we have to learn about the child. If we know these, at least some of these things only, we will be able to do a good job as a teacher, right? We all understand it. First thing is to afford a thorough knowledge of the child. Then to understand the nature, aims, and purposes of education. So as teachers, we need to understand the nature, aims, and purposes of education. That means, right, we need to know what we are teaching, why we are teaching, and how we are teaching. Right. Then to acquire familiarity with the technical vocabulary and to further an understanding and appreciation of the scientific procedures by which the data of education psychology is obtained. So we have to make ourselves familiar with the technical vocabulary, and we have to have a further understanding and appreciation of scientific procedures through which the data of education psychology is obtained. So that is also a function of psychology. Then to provide a significant knowledge of the developmental process with particular emphasis on the promotion, guidance, and control of mental and moral concepts. So we have to have a very good understanding about how children's development takes place, right? And I mean, we will discuss, right? Under child development, we will learn that children, their development take place in 4 aspects: physical aspect, intellectual aspect, the same thing which we call cognitive, uh, physical, intellectual or cognitive, social, and moral and emotional. So the way now we will learn, right? A child passes through various stages of these developments from time to time in their childhood up until their adulthood. Right? So we have to have a very good understanding of these things. Then only we will be able to teach them properly. Now, say for example, right now, when it comes to intellectual development, right, there are 4 stages called sensory motor stage, pre-operational stage, concrete operational stage, and formal operational stage. Right. Now, I would like to ask you a question. Right, since some of you are still some of you are teaching, right? I mean, most of you are language teachers, I think. Are you? What are you? Hello.
No.
Hello. Yeah. Are you language teachers or what? Or we have a miscellaneous group, people of all kind. I mean, do we have all types of teachers? Is it only English teachers? Who?
Mathematics.
Language
Math.
teachers.
Very good. Mathematic teachers are there, no, right? Okay, very good, right? That's what I mean. It is relevant to you, right? When do you teach geometry? At what age? At what age do you teach geometry? Yes? Tell me, please. Hello. Can you hear me? Cool. I know the one.
Grade 6 to 9.
Very good. Why do we start teaching at grade 6? At grade 6, what is their age? How old are they?
10.
11
6
years.
means 11. 11 means what? 11 means they are becoming adolescents, right? Now, in psychology, right, this age is called formal operational stage, 12 and above, 12 and above. After passing 11, 12 and above is considered formal operational stage. Now the stage before that is called concrete operational. Why it is concrete operational? Why it is called concrete operational? Because children are able to perform acts only if they see things. If they concrete means if the objects or whatever the things are, whatever is taught and whatever is dealt are visible, they are very capable of performing those operations. But they cannot do what fictions. That means abstract thinking means thinking. So, you know, geometry, it's more about abstract thinking. No concrete things are there. So, if geometry was taught at an earlier stage, however bright the student, they would not understand it and they would really be fed up with it. That is why geometry is taught at that particular age. So what has helped people to do this? It is the knowledge of psychology. Earlier, people who did not know, before people get some idea about these things, they started teaching those difficult subjects from beginning, from the morning till the evening, right? Irrespective of children's ages and all that. But now all the lessons are so systematically and very professionally designed so that there won't be any problems, right? So what has helped us to design the curriculum like that? That is the knowledge of psychology. And also to provide an understanding of the principles governing learning together with the knowledge of the techniques for guiding improvements in learning and the application of practical problems in the classroom. So in order to understand what practical problems we face in the classroom and how to solve these problems and what methods and what techniques and what appropriate methods should be used and what appropriate measures should be taken, all that has been, right, enlightened by the knowledge of psychology. To present the theories underlying the measurements and evaluation of mental abilities, aptitudes, achievements, interest, and personality organization. So various other things like these things also have, we have been able to perform a variety of these things with the knowledge of psychology. So functions of psychology, under this there are many functions. You will have to remember at least 4 or 5 of these functions. We'll see, move to the next. Okay, this is right. Now, I'm just going to, before winding up, I'm just going to recapitulate on what we have learned up to now, right? What is psychology? The term psychology is derived from the Greek words psych meaning soul and logos meaning study that we have discussed. It means science of soul. Psychology was first defined as the science of soul. Then psychology was introduced as the science of mind. Later on, it was defined as the study of consciousness. Now it is defined as the study of total behavior. Right. Psychology is the description of an now William James in 1890 says psychology is the description and explanation of state of consciousness as such. Then psychology is the science of consciousness, Wilhelm Wundt says. Psychology can be best and most comprehensively defined as the positive science of the conduct of driving of living creatures, says William Magold. Right. These are some of the definitions. Psychology is the science which aims to give us better understanding and control of the behavior of the organism as a whole. Again, William Magold in 1949. Psychology may be more satisfactorily defined as the science of human behavior, says Pillsbury. Psychology is the science of behavior, says J.P. Watson. So likewise, you can see various other definitions are there, right? We have discussed these things. Have you received this one also?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You can leisurely read through them, right? Okay. Right.
So do we want to by heart the definitions of psychology and all?
Not all, but you have to at least for 3 or 4, right? 3 or 4 definitions, because when you are asked to explain something, it's better if you can quote some of these things and explain, right? Okay.
Okay, sir.
So now we come to another important thing, the behavior. Now what we consider as psychology is the study of behavior. We call behavior not only of human beings but also of the other animals and all the other living creatures, including even trees, right? It is a total behavior, right? But under education psychology, we study only about the behavior of children or the students, right? The term behavior is taken in its totality, connoting a wide and comprehensive meaning. Any manifestation of life is activity, says Woodworth, and behavior is a collective name for these activities. The term behavior includes all the motor or cognitive activities like walking, swimming, dancing, etc. Cognitive activities like thinking, reasoning, imagining, and affective activities like feeling happy, sad, and angry. Now, what it says, behavior is not only our motor activities, which are called cognitive activities. Motor activities means all our movements, right? Then mental activities or cognitive activities like thinking, reasoning, imagining, they are also behavior. And feelings, feeling happy, bad, all these are, right? They also come under behavior, right? So it is a wide range. This includes not only conscious behavior and activities of the human mind, but also the subconscious and unconscious, and hence covers not only the overt, but also the covert behavior involving inner experiences and mental processes. Now, I have explained psychology, we can divide into categories: pure psychology and applied psychology. Pure psychology, under pure psychology, you get general psychology, abnormal psychology. So this is only a kind of a revision. So I'm going very bit faster. Social psychology, experimental psychology, physiological psychology, parapsychology, geopsychology, and developmental psychology. These are the branches of applied psychology, education psychology, clinical psychology, industrial psychology, legal psychology, military psychology, and political psychology.
Sir, did you send this PDF also
Yes,
to
my
the
dear.
group? Sir, did you send this PDF also to the group?
I have sent it to our Arshad sir. I don't know whether he has shared with you or not. If he is not shared, I will share it. I will send it again to him and he will share. Haven't you found? Has anybody found this?
No, so it was there, dear. I have
It was
seen that blue
Ah,
color presentation. I
yeah.
have seen.
Blue color, maybe different ones. This is I sent a more updated version. We'll see, right? I sent earlier one also. Don't know whether the updated version also has been shared. We'll see.
Okay, sir, we'll see.
Okay. So can you read this? What is education psychology? Education psychology is the application of what? Can please, can one of you read, please? Education psychology is the application of the findings
Of the
of
finding
psychology.
of psychology in the field of education, it is one of the main branches of psychology dealing mainly with the problems, process, and products of education.
It studies the human behavior, particularly behavior of the learner in relation to his educational environment. So actually what? It studies the human behavior. What behavior? The behavior of the learner in relation to his educational environment. It is the branch of psychology that studies the behavior of the learner in relation to his educational needs and his environment. So Skinner says education psychology is that branch of psychology which deals with teaching and learning. Education psychology describes and explains the learning experiences of an individual from birth through old age. Crow and Crow says. Education psychology is the science of education, says Belie. Some of these definitions also you will have to remember, right? Uses of education psychology for teaching and learning. What are the uses? These are very important. These are the uses of education psychology. Why? To know the learner, to select and organize subject matter or learning experiences, to suggest methods and techniques for teaching and learning, to understand in the teacher himself, to understand the curriculum, to understand the teaching learning process, to arrange learning situations, to acquire him with, to acquaint him with the mechanisms of heredity and environment, to solve classroom problems, and to maintain discipline. Right. What are the uses of education psychology? To know the learner, as we discussed earlier, we have to identify the learner. There are various aspects we need to know of the learner. So in order to know the learner, we need to have some knowledge of educational psychology. Then the second thing, to select and organize subject matter or learning experiences. That means to prepare the syllabus or prepare the lessons that we are teaching. We need to have a awareness of education psychology. That is, then only we are able to select age appropriate learning experiences for our children. Then to suggest methods and techniques for teaching and learning. To suggest methods as to which methods are to be used, right? I mean, how we can use and all that. Now we know, right? There are different kinds of learners, like we know, right? Visual learners, auditory learners, and tactile learners. Right? So to cater to all these different kinds of learners, we have to use different methods and different learning experiences. So in order to prepare them, right? We have to have a good understanding of educational psychology. Then for you to understand you as a teacher, right? How competent I am. Am I good at this? Do I have enough knowledge? Right? Do I know my students? Right? To assess yourself as a teacher also, education psychology is important. Then to understand the curriculum, to understand what kind of subject, what kind of lessons are there in the curriculum, whether the lessons given in the curriculum are appropriate for your students, right? Then if I mean whether they are too easy, difficult, or good for them, right? Your knowledge of education psychology is important. Right. If you have a good knowledge of education psychology, you might be able to, right now, suppose the lessons are a bit too high for them, then you tone them down and bring it up to their standard and teach. So for you to do this, you have to have some understanding about your students' levels and all that. To understand the teaching learning process, to understand how the teaching learning takes place. So you are the person who makes it happen. In order to make it happen, you have to know how it is to be done, and to arrange learning situations, and also to make yourself familiar with the mechanisms of heredity and environment. Heredity means our biological endowments. Environment means where we teach, to solve classroom problems, and to maintain discipline. For all these things, right, you knowledge of psychology is important. Right. Now you can see education and education psychology. Education by all means is an attempt to mold and shape the behavior. Now we are going to talk about the relationship between education and educational psychology. Education by all means is an attempt to mold and shape the behavior of students. It is an attempt to mold and shape the behavior of students. It aims to produce desirable changes in them for all-round development of their personalities. Right. The essential knowledge and skills necessary to do this job satisfactorily is supplied by education psychology, as Peels. Now, Peels said, education psychology helps the teacher to understand the development of his pupils, the range and limits of their capacities, the process through which they and establish their social relationships. Okay, now this is about how how it helps the teacher. But before that, okay, scope of educational psychology. Under this, right? What scope means? The limits. What are the limits of education psychology? What comes under this? Its purview. Learner or the pupil, learning experiences, learning process, learning situation and environment, and the teacher. We'll see how it will discuss one by one. Learner. The total subject matter of education psychology primarily revolves around this factor, learner. This subject acquaints us with the need of knowing the learner and deals with the learner and the techniques of knowing him well. So under the scope, I mean, when we talk about the scope of education psychology, one main area is learner. We need to know who the learner is and how to satisfy the learner. Then learning experience. This is the second area of education psychology through the subject. Though the subject does not directly connect itself with the problem of what to teach or what learning experience to provide the learner, it has the responsibility of suggesting the techniques on acquiring learning experiences. Educational psychology helps in deciding the kind of learning experiences desirable at different stages of growth and development of the learner, so that these experiences can be acquired with the great ease and satisfaction. I have discussed these points. In this area, educational psychology has the subject matter which facilitate the selection of the desirable experience for the learner. Learning experiences mean subject matter as to which subject matter to be selected for the child is decided by the teacher. In order to decide it, the teacher should have a good awareness and knowledge of psychology. The learning process. After knowing the learner and deciding on the types of learning experiences that are to be provided, the next problem arises when helping learner properly acquires these experiences with ease and convenience. The method and how the process happens, how it should, I mean, what are the steps learning process. Now we know, right, when we get a lesson, we plan it. It has certain steps. So those steps are sequenced according to a scientific method, right? So learning process. So in order to design the learning process, you have to have a good understanding about these learning teaching mechanisms. What gives you an understanding about these mechanisms is your knowledge of educational psychology. Therefore, around this pivot, educational psychology deals with the nature of learning and how it takes place and comprises topics such as laws, principles, and theories of learning, remembering and forgetting, perceiving, concept formation, thinking and reasoning process, problem solving, transfer of learning, ways and means of effective learning, and so on. Now, under this, we are going to learn all these things: growth, learning theories, motivation, concept formation, memory, right? How our brain works, how problem solving, right? Ways and means of effective learning. All these things we are going to discuss in detail under this. Under this topic, educational psychology focuses on the environmental factors and learning situation means the environmental factor. I mean, the setting that we do the teaching. Then the teacher, right? Last but not least is the teacher. It emphasizes the need of knowing the self for a teacher to play his role properly in the process of education. It discusses his conflicts, motivation, anxiety, adjustment levels, and aspiration, and so on. Now the teacher has to know his strengths and weaknesses, and also, right, he has to motivate himself to do a better job. So for this, all these things, your knowledge of psychology would matter. It discusses his conflicts, motivation, anxiety, adjustment level, and aspiration, and so on. Moreover, it throws light on the essential personal traits, interests, aptitudes, characteristics of effective teaching so as to inspire him to become a successful teacher. Right. So, functions, of course, we have discussed. Right. So there is a small issue with the, I mean, the slides are there, right? The arrangements sometimes overlapping ones are there anyway, right? Now, we have discussed what is psychology, what is education psychology, definitions, the functions of education psychology, scope of education psychology, the importance of education psychology, as well as evolution of psychology in terms of schools of thought that emerge. The 5 major schools of thought we have discussed, right? So when you go through the presentations I have sent you, you will get a very good understanding. Okay, right? So next day, right, we will start a new lesson. But before that, about half an hour, right, I will keep the forum open for you to get any doubts you got cleared. Is it all right? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
දැන් මම මේ කරපු මම මේ ඩෙෆිනිෂන් එකේ ඩෙෆිනිෂන්ස් වලින් ඉඳන් පටන් අරගෙන සයිකොලොජි වල ඩෙෆිනිෂන්ස් කියලා ඊට පස්සේ এডুকেෂන් සයිකොලොජි වල ඩෙෆිනිෂන්ස් කියලා ඒකේ ෆන්ක්ෂන්ස් ගැන කියලා ඒකේ ස්කෝප් එක ගැන කියලා ඒක ඩෙවලොප් වෙච්ච හැටි කියලා ඊට පස්සේ සයිකොලොජි එක කොහොමද ඩෙවලොප් වුනේ සයන්ස් එකක් විදියට ඒක ඩෙවලොප් වෙගෙන ආපු ආකාර ටික කියන්නේ මම ඒකේ අර ස්කූල් ඔෆ් තෝට්ස් කියලා අපි කියනවා අර අපි ගුරුකුල නේද ඒ ගුරුකුල ගැන කතා කරා පහක් විතර ඒකෙන් වැදගත් මේවා කීපයක් ගැනත් අපි කතා කළා මේ දේවල් ටික ඔයාලා හොඳට බලා ගන්න ඔයාලට අවශ්‍ය නම් මට වෙන තව නෝට් එකකුත් එවන්න පුළුවන් හැබැයි ඒක අර පොතකින් ගත්ත නෝට් එකක් හරි ෆොටෝස් තියෙනවා මට එවන්න පුළුවන් ඔයාලට තවත් ඩීප් අන්ඩර්ස්ටෑන්ඩින් එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන් එක්සැම්පල් උත් එක්කලාම ඒවයි හරි මම ඕනනම් එවන්නම් ඊළඟට Apex අපේ යුනිවර්සිටි එකෙන් ඔයාලට දීලා තියෙන සිලබස් එක තියෙනවා ඒකත් කියවා ගන්න හරි මං හිතන්නේ මේ අපි මේ කරපු දේවල් ටික ගොඩක් ප්‍රමාණවත් වෙනවා ඒ සිලබස් එකේ තියෙන දේවල් එක්කලා ගොඩක් යනවා මං හිතන්නේ ඉහාට ගියපු දේවලුත් තියෙනවා රයිට් මොනවා හරි ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවා නම් අඩුපාඩුවක් තියෙනවා නම් ඔයාලට ඊළඟ සෙෂන් එකේ පළවෙනි පැය භාගය හෝ පැය මම ඒකට වෙන් කරනවා පුළුවන් නේද ඔයාලට ලැහැත් වෙලා එන්න ඒකට හෙලෝ
ඔව් සර්.
Yes, sir. Oh,
ඔයාලට ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවද පැහැදිලි කරන අපැහැදිලිද මොනවා හරි ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවද
අර තියරිස් වලදී තමයි ඒක අපිට සමහර විට අලුත් නිසා වෙන්න ඇති පොඩ්ඩක් මේ
මොනවද
අනිත් අර
schools of thought ද හෙලෝ හෙලෝ තියරිස් කියලා කියපු දේ schools of thought ටිකද පොඩ්ඩක් අපැහැදිලි එහෙමද
නෑ සර් මේ ඇනලිටික්ස් තියරිස් පොඩ්ඩක් කතා කරේ සර් මේ ෆන්ක්ෂනලිසම් ස්ට්‍රක්චරලිසම් ගෙස්ටෝල් තියරි ඒ වගේ තව පොඩ්ඩක් එක්ස්ප්ලেইন කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් අර එක්සැම්පල් එක සර්
මං ඊළඟ දවසේ ඊළඟ වෙලාව ආපහු මුලින් ඉඳන් පැහැදිලි කරා. ඔය ටික හොඳට බලන් එන්නකෝ ඊට පස්සේ මම අපි ඩිස්කස් කරමු. හරි? හරි?
සර් සිංහලෙන්
අයිඩියා එකක් අරගෙන එන්නකෝ. සිග්නල් කරන්න ඕනේද? හරි හරි. එහෙම හරි නෝ ප්‍රොබ්ලම්.
සමහර words තියෙනවා සර් අපිට මේකත් එක්ක unfamiliar ඒවා නිසා ටිකක්
මොකද පුතා?
සමහර unfamiliar words තියෙනවා සර් ඔය theories එක කතා කරගෙන යද්දි ඒ නිසා චුට්ටක් explain කරන්න පුළුවන්.
පුළුවන් සිංහලෙන් කතා කරන්න. හරි. අපි ඊළඟ දවසේ පළවෙනි පැය අරගෙන අපි ඕක පැහැදිලි කරලා ඉවර කරගමු. මම ඒ ටික ඔක්කොම ඔයාලට මට පොඩ්ඩක් පුළුවන් නම් මට ඒ ටිකනේ ඕනේ නේද? අනික ෆන්ක්ෂන්ස් නම් ඒව ගැටලුවක් නැහැනේ. ඩෙෆිනිෂන්ස් ඒව ගැටලුවක් නැහැනේ. අර ස්කූල් ඔෆ් තෝට්ස් ටිකනේ ඕනේ නේද? ඒ ටික නේද පැහැදිලි කරන්න ඕනේ?
ඔව් සර්.
ඔව් සර්.
වෙන තියනවාද ඒත් කියන්න ගැටලුවක් නැහැ. හරි? අපි දැන් මේ සෝරි මට පහුගිය දවස් ටිකේම මට මේ මගේ මට කරන්න උනේ මගේ ලැප් එක නැතුව ඒකයි සමහර වෙලාවට ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් එක නැතුව කරන්න උනේ. දැන් ඉස්සරහට එහෙම ගැටලුවක් නැහැ. මම ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් හරහා තමයි ඔයාලට කරන්නේ. එතකොට ගැටලුවක් නැහැ. ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් එක බලා ගන්නත් පුළුවන්. ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවා නම් අහන්නත් පුළුවන්. හරි? එහෙනම් අපි will meet next day. right?
සර්
ඔව් කියන්න.
සර් මේ රෙකෝඩින් එක දාන්න පුළුවන්ද?
මම නම් රෙකෝඩ් කරේ නෑ මේ මං හිතන්නේ අපේ සර් කරා නේද අර්ෂඩ් සර්ලා කරලා ඇති. එහෙම නැත්නම් මං ඊළඟ දවසේ රෙකෝඩ් කරලා ඔයාලට දාන්න. හරි?
ඕකේ සර්. thank you.
හරි. එහෙනම් good night.
අපිට මේ ලෙක්චර් එක කරගෙන යන ගමන්ම මේ ලෙසන් එකත් එක්කම එන ප්‍රශ්නයක් වගේ සාකච්ඡා කරොත් එහෙම පුළුවන්ද සර්?
පුළුවන්. අපි දැන් මේක ඉවර වෙලා අපි ප්‍රශ්න සාකච්ඡා කරනවා මේකට relevant. හරි? දැන් මේක ලෙසන් එක ඉවරයි. ඊළඟ දවසේ මම questions discuss කරනවා. හරි?
right sir. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you sir. Good night. Thank you sir. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Good night.